Hello everyone, this is Movie Recap. Today we are going to introduce the Korean science fiction movie The Host, which was released in 2006. Where we live, there are always some waters or lakes. Have you ever wondered what creatures live underneath these places? Today's story takes place in Korea's HANJIANG River. A terrible monster is ready to move. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. At a US military base in Korea, a researcher has discovered a large amount of expired formaldehyde. This guy is really an evil person. He had his assistant dump all the waste formaldehyde into the HANJIANG River. And it was his action that led to a series of disasters that followed. 2 years later, two men were fishing in the water. They accidentally found some strange, black fish. Not only do they have a lot of tails, they also bite, and the two did not care. Then 4 years passed. A man who intended to commit suicide at the HANJIANG River Bridge. He also saw a group of black creatures in the water. A man named Kang-do, due to poor living conditions as a child. When he grew up, he had a low IQ and was always sleeping. Kang-do had a marriage, but his wife saw him like this. She did not want to live with him and left after giving birth to daughter Xian-shu. Kang-do loved Xian-shu very much, and because of his indisputable, the burden of the whole family rested on his old father's shoulders. The father and son opened a store by the HANJIANG River and had a decent life. Kang-do also has a younger brother who just graduated, and a younger sister who is a world athlete. That day, when Xian-shu came home from school, Kang-do called Xian-shu inside the house. He showed her the change he had saved in a cardboard box. He planned to buy a new phone for Hyun-shu, but Hyun-shu didn't care. Father and daughter watched TV. Today is the day of Kang-do's sister's competition. During this competition, the father calls Kang-do out and asks him to entertain the guests. While Kang-do was serving the guests, he noticed that many people were gathered around the HANJIANG River. It turned out that there was an object hanging on the bridge, and the onlookers thought it was a large puffer fish. But at that moment, the creature slowly jumped into the water and swam to the shore. Kang-do threw a can of beer into the water. A tail immediately swept the beer away. People were excitedly throwing things into the water, and the scene was very lively. However, before long, a fish-like creature rushed to the shore. It attacked the onlookers without warning. The crowd who had not had time to escape. Some were eaten into the stomach, some were thrown into the water. In the process, a group of people ran into a container. The monster also followed in. The whole container was shaken up. At the critical moment, Kang-do and an American soldier ran over. They opened the door, saving the people. But the monster rushed out again. Kang-do held up the roadside sign and smashed it. This directly provoked the monster. The American soldier did not escape in time. The monster ate his arm. Kang-do smashed the monster's tail and was splashed with blood. At that moment, Xian-shu, who didn't know the truth, walked out of the room. Before she could react, she was dragged by Kang-do and started to run forward. But after a few steps, the two fell down. Kang-do grabbed a hand and ran, but he didn't expect that he had pulled the wrong person. His own daughter, Xian-shu, was still behind him. The monster took Xian-shu by the tail and jumped into the HANJIANG River. Kang-do was very angry and immediately jumped into the water. But in the end, he couldn't catch up. This matter soon attracted the attention of the government. A large number of soldiers blocked the area. Kang-do's younger siblings also came to the shelter. The family cried out in front of Xian-shu's picture. Then, a man in a protective suit came to the shelter. He wanted to find the person who had contact with the monster. Kang-do raised his hand foolishly and said that the monster's blood splashed on his face. Several police officers immediately arrested Kang-do. The family also followed Kang-do to the hospital by car. In the process, a news was reported on TV. The American soldier fighting monsters with Kang-do were infected. Experts speculated that the monster must be carrying some unknown virus. Meanwhile, the streets and alleys of Korea began disinfection operations. That night, while Kang-do is stealing food, the phone suddenly rings. Kang-do picks up the phone and realizes that it is Xian-shu who is calling. She hadn't been eaten by the monster, and before he could ask where she was, the phone hung up. On the other side, two staff members were disinfecting, attacked by the monster and thrown into the sewer. Xian Shu was hiding in a concrete hole. She quietly crawled out to look for telephone. But unfortunately, the phone was not working. Kong Du told the police that Xian Shu is still alive. However, not only did the police not listen, they also treated him like a psychopath. The family had no choice but to start an escape plan. But in the process, a nurse recognized them. After a lot of interception, Kong Du's family finally escaped from the hospital. Subsequently, Kong Du's father also spent all his savings to bought a map of the sewers. Meanwhile, the family was wanted by the government for their escape. When crossing the checkpoint, in order not to be caught, the father also bribes the checkpoint officer with the money Kong Du saved to buy a cell phone for Xian Shu. After the family escaped, they started searching the sewers. After a long search, they still couldn't find Xian Shu. During search, they almost injured a pair of brothers. The two brothers were vagrants who broke into Kong Du's supermarket to find some food. However, when they left, they met the monster and both were swallowed. The four of them returned to the supermarket and ate some noodles. But Xian Shu is still in the sewer, waiting for his family to rescue her. The monster sent the two brothers to the sewers. The brother was dead, but the little brother was still alive. So, Xian Shu and this boy depend on each other in the sewer. While the Kong Du family rests, the monster arrives near the supermarket. Father fired a shot at the monster. The monster was directly enraged and overturned the supermarket. The father shot it down. When the family climbed out to check the situation, and the monster did not die, everyone rushed to start chasing, but the monster still jumped into the water. At this moment, the army appeared next to them. The father told his sons and daughters to go first. He chose to stay and buy time for others to escape. And the monster also came after him from the water. Just when the father pulled the trigger, he found no bullets in the gun. The only thing that awaited him was death. Father waved his hand helplessly at Kong Du. Everyone can only watch him helplessly and be knocked down by the monster in despair. The monster used its tail to slam the dead father to the ground. Sad Kong Du ran to see his father for the last time after the monster left. He was caught by the soldiers who arrived. At that moment, the news of the American soldier's death from the virus was broadcast on TV. Since the Korean government was unable to solve this disaster, they decided to use a chemical developed in the United States. Kong Du's brother traced the call to his niece through an acquaintance. However, this guy is really bad. He betrayed his friend to the police for the reward money. Thanks to the brother's clever, he not only found the location of his niece, but also managed to escape from the police. During the escape, the brother fell under the bridge. Before he fainted, he sent his niece's address to his sister. After receiving the news, the sister rushed there immediately. However, on the way to there, she encountered the monster and was thrown into a crevice. On Kong Du's side, doctors continued to examine him. An American specialist said that the virus had attacked Kong Du's brain. He must be operated on. But privately, the specialist tells the assistant that there is no virus at all. That American soldier had died of surgical shock. Now that it has happened, even if there's no virus, they also want to create viruses on Kong Du, because the government cannot make a fool of itself. After the operation, the doctor used a syringe to draw Kong Du's blood to disguise it as a virus. However, Kong Du grabbed the syringe first. He used the nurse as a hostage and escaped from the lab. And Kong Du's brother also woke up. He was saved by a beggar. The two made a lot of napalm. At that moment, the little homeless boy beside Xian Shu fainted. In order to find rescue, she took advantage of the monster's sleep. She climbed on the monster's back and tried to escape by grabbing the rope. But the monster caught her with its tail first. Then it also put Xian Shu on the ground. Xian Shu rushed to the entrance of the cave, but the two were eventually eaten. When Kong Du arrived, Xian Shu had already disappeared. He climbed down the rope, and the monster crawled over his head, with an arm in its mouth. Kong Du recognizes that it is his daughter's arm. At the same time, the government was planning to release chemicals to kill the monster. Many people came out to oppose it, and clashes broke out. But when the monster appeared, the people immediately scattered in fear and fled. The police released the chemicals directly. The monster was instantly drowned by toxic fumes and issued a painful scream. A policeman fired at the monster. Kangdu was afraid that he would hurt Xian Shu and jumped on the police. Then, he rushed to the monster and pulled out the eaten Xian Shu and the little boy. Unfortunately, Xian Shu was already dead and the family was in pain. Just then, the monster woke up again. Kangdu picks up an iron bar and thrusts it at the monster. His brother also threw a gasoline bottle at the monster. The monster was forced to escape. The beggar seized the opportunity and poured gasoline into its mouth. The brother picked up the bottle of gasoline to blow up the monster. But his hand slipped, but the bottle fell to the ground. At the critical moment, the sister lit the burning arrow, shot the monster's head. The monster screamed in pain and tried to run into the water, but was stopped by Kangdu. He directly poked the monster to death with an iron bar. He then found the Litli, who was still alive. He took the little boy home and adopted him. The two of them lived happily ever after. At the end of the film, the government clarifies that the disaster was not a virus attack. The story ends with a bang. This film is a very successful disaster movie. Small people fight big monsters. There are several scenes that are very touching. There is actually more than one monster in the film. In fact, government officials are the biggest monster. If you like my story, please don't forget to click subscribe. See you next time.